Bonjour.
Hello and welcome to So French, le podcast from Paris about France, its crazy politics and life à la française. My name is Sara Bertilsson.
And my name is Stefan Vries. And in this episode of So French, we talk about the first round of the local elections, what takeaways and what outlook for this weekend's second round.
And the bitter aftertaste of the National Assembly's minute of silence for extreme right activist Quentin de Ranc.
Yeah, and speaking of taste, we're going to dinner again. We'll also give you a quick recap of this year's food trends. And of course, the famous Michelin guide has handed out its French stars for 2026.
All right, Stefan, how are you? Good to see you.
I'm very well, thank you, Sara. How are you?
I said we were in Paris. I'm actually not in Paris today. I'm in Normandy. But,
hence all the flowers behind your head.
Yeah.
I'm in Amsterdam, where all the books are.
All the books.
Yeah.
For the intellectuals.
Absolutely. But we have something in common this week, local elections in Amsterdam and in Paris. But let's focus on the French local elections, far more interesting than the Dutch ones. A year before the presidential elections in May next year, it was also seen as sort of taking the temperature of the French electorate, a sort of test of where French politics stand at the moment. What are your main takeaways, Sara, of the first round that took place last Sunday?
I think, the big takeaway is that actually in most of the French municipalities, there will be no second round of elections. And the polling stations will remain closed. 94% of the municipalities will have closed polling stations next weekend because these elections were actually already done and dusted this weekend in the first round. That means that, one of the lists got more than 50% of the vote.
Yeah.
So it's mostly for tiny towns. You have towns here with 1,000, 3,000 inhabitants. Many of these have only one list. And many of those lists are actually not even party political. They are, as they say here, independent or diverse. So that is maybe the main takeaway. But also what I was thinking about after this first round of elections was that everyone was proclaiming themselves the victorious in this election. You could hear all the parties came out saying that, we did so great. This shows that, we have the population behind us. Which is, true for some, less true for others. First out after the election results on a national level was Jordan Bardella.
Yeah.
Kicking off by saying that, these results show that they did really, really well. But I mean, their results was mixed. They did keep most of the towns where they were already held the mayoral position, and they managed to get a couple of new ones as well. But it's not a home run to say for them.
Yeah, and can we say that this was like a test for next year, or can't we draw any conclusions of the results of the last Sunday?
I think that you can. Definitely. What we can see, and this is something that we've seen on the national level, that Emmanuel Macron's project of creating this great center and uniting the country, which was what he set out in the beginning of his term, and when he ran for president the first time, that the only result and the consequence of this has been that we have a more polarized political landscape than ever, with the far left and the far right gaining support also in local elections.
Yeah, we didn't see any candidates have a good score, right, of Macron's candidates? Or is there any city where Macron still is alive?
it's always been the problem for his, since this wasn't the party, it was more of a project of one man. So the Renaissance has always had a problem implementing themselves on the local level. So definitely very few successes for the Renaissance party to the extent that it still exists. But also for, Les Républicains, traditional conservative party, socialists as well. I mean, those who made the biggest gains, I would say, is still the far left. The far left, La France Insoumise, that has been paying more attention over these past years on local elections and really investing in, getting more support for the local elections, because they also realize that this is where they will have the possibility to gain votes on a national level and for the presidential election.
So do you think that next year we will see a duel between Mélenchon and any candidate from the extreme right, or is that too early to say?
I would say it's far too early to say,
Yeah.
and it's always difficult to say because, as I mentioned, many of the candidates, when it comes to local elections here are very, very, very local, and people vote for in many small municipalities for candidates without a specific party. So it's difficult to draw the big conclusions. What you can say is that participation rates are not great. They're better than they were in 2020, but which was, of course, a very particular circumstance because those elections took place during the COVID pandemic. But we're still not back up to the same levels that we were, some decades ago. So the interest from people to go and participate in these elections is not
No.
great. One thing, though, what you can see is that in the cities where there is a lot at stake. So, for example, the big cities like Paris and in Lyon, for example, and other towns where there has been a lot of media coverage about what is at stake. There you see that people actually really turn out to vote. So you have an increased number of voters and participation.
Yeah, let's zoom in a little bit on Paris. Of course, the Paris region is about 20% of the population in France. Many different municipalities, the biggest, of course, being the city of Paris. All eyes there were on the battle between Rachida Dati and the socialist candidate. Dati was convinced, the former minister of culture, also former minister of justice under Nicolas Sarkozy, she was convinced that the Parisians were now finally ready to vote for the right and to elect a right-wing mayor. Was she right? Were her wishes fulfilled?
Well, that we will see on Sunday, right? Coming up next week. But the result for Rachida Dati was, I think, quite disappointing. 25% of the vote, which is less than was expected in the beginning. And her socialist opponent doing better than the polls had predicted and gaining almost 38% of the vote. Emmanuel Grégoire, who has a list uniting the socialists, the Greens, and some other left centrist parties. So it looked like it was a good night for the socialists and that they were going to keep the power of City Hall. But what the result also showed that just to recap, any list that gains more than 10% of the votes in the first round are allowed to stand in the second round. So this, of course, between the two rounds means that there's a lot of negotiations going on. And what now has been decided is that Rachida Dati has united and fusioned her list with the centrist, the Renaissance candidate, who got around 11% of the vote. So this, of course, increases the potential voters for Dati for the second round.
Do you think the voters so that these are basically, in theory, Macron's voters, do you think they will vote for Rachida Dati, who is also a very controversial figure, even on the right, although she was also a minister under Emmanuel Macron? Do you think this will work? What?
You know what? I'm not one to bet on this one. I've been hearing people from Bournacel, so the Renaissance candidate's own party, saying that it's about 50-50. 50% of their voters are likely to vote for Dati, but Dati is not their favorite politician. She has, as we've been talking about, a lot of judicial problems coming up.
Yeah.
She's involved in many scandals and corruption scandals.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's really a 50-50. It's definitely not 100% of the Bournacel vote that will go to Dati. The question is how many. And as I said, some are saying around 50-50. The second thing that complicates the story for Dati is that she united her lists with Bournacel, but the extreme right candidate, Sara, who got actually more than 10%, so not really all, 10.5% of the vote. She has decided to withdraw for the second round and then encourages her voters to vote for Rachida Dati. But she is a candidate, like a very extreme candidate. And even though she's not, officially uniting her list with Rachida Dati, she's just withdrawing from the race. But her support could actually scare some of the voters, both from Rachida Dati, well, her traditional voters, but even the Bournacel voters that could say, like, well, we don't want to win with the help of the extreme right. So, I mean, it's difficult to say in what sense, and then also how many of Knafo's voters are going to vote for Rachida Dati. That's not like a done deal either. So it looks on paper for the moment as if Rachida Dati has the upper hand on this, but there are many ifs, and there are many things that has to work for her to actually win the city hall.
Yeah. And we just mentioned Nicolas Sarkozy. He was the president when Rachida Dati was a Minister of Justice. Of course, no episode of So French is complete without the name Sarkozy. But now we talk about the younger one, Louis Sarkozy, the son of Nicolas. He also participated in the elections last Sunday in the southern city of Menton at the Côte d'Azur. How did he fare there?
Yeah, we talked about him in another episode, right? And we said that his objective was to copy his father's accomplishments and to become the mayor at the age of 28.
But it's like Greek mythology. You have to kill your father in order to become somebody, right? So did he
They're
succeed?
both still very much alive. Well, for the moment, no. For the moment, no. He came in third in this small town of Menton, so 30,000 inhabitants. I think he had around 18% of the vote. He has now decided then to unite with the other right-wing candidates and to try to beat the person who came up first, which was the far-right Rassemblement National candidate. But in any case, he was the third man in the vote, so it's looking very unlikely that he will become the mayor of Menton and then repeat his father's success of.
Speaking of his father, he was in the news again this week. Of course, the appeal in the Libya corruption case started, but there was also another moment last week, actually, for Nicolas Sarkozy, again with the courts, where he wanted to combine two sentences in two different cases. He was convicted of 6 months where he had to wear an ankle band, and he wanted to combine the two sentences and make it one sentence, and the judge said no. So Nicolas Sarkozy, soon he will have to wear an ankle band again. But of course, the appeal that started this week, there he is risking 5 years imprisonment, and yeah, that's also on the table, right?
There are so many of these. I must admit that I am a bit lost when it comes to all these cases that Nicolas Sarkozy is involved in, because you have the first trial, and then you have the appeals trial, and then you have the execution of the sentencing, and then, as you say, him trying to combine different convictions. It is very, very complicated. I was maybe thinking, for Rachida Dati, someone has set up this website called Wikidati. I don't know if you're aware of it, where they're actually so that you can follow all the different corruption cases that she is involved in. Rachida Dati has been trying to get this website taken down without success, must say. Maybe someone should do a similar thing for Nicolas Sarkozy, because it is very, very complicated to keep up with.
What is also striking is that actually, if you look at the ministers of Nicolas Sarkozy, so he was a president from 2007 to 2012, almost 20 years ago. Incredible. But nevertheless, if you look at the ministers at the time in his government, I think almost all of them have been in some way involved in legal cases or corruption cases or crimes. It is incredible. Maybe we should set up a government wiki of convictions of all the ministers of the past 20-25 years. But yeah, it's incredible. And Nicolas Sarkozy.
And then people are surprised that people have lost trust in politicians and the political system. It's a bit sad, I must say. We all deserve better than corrupt politicians, I would say.
Yeah, but the strange thing is that they keep being re-elected. There was a mayor of a small town in France last Sunday who is a suspect of sexual abuse of minors, and he was re-elected. So apparently the voters, they don't really care, which is also a very saddening conclusion.
Yeah.
Or observation.
I think it's sometimes, also the problem is that you have it has become a world of its own, where people don't feel that they want even to get involved and become politicians themselves. But we also have the good examples. Saint-Denis in city north of Paris, where we visited once. We visited for one of our episodes some years ago.
Indeed.
The kings of Paris are buried there. They elected their mayor in the first round immediately, and a very popular mayor, it looks like. So, there are some good examples as well coming out, and a man who really seems to be part of the community and supported by the community, and a new face on the political scene. So, there are some good examples as well.
Let's talk very briefly about a topic that we discussed a few episodes ago. In mid-February, the National Assembly paid tribute to the far-right activist Canton Deranque. So the whole National Assembly held a minute of silence. Deranque was beaten to death in a street fight between the far right and the far left earlier in February. And the entire National Assembly rose in the chamber, as did members of government. In our episode, we were more or less, let's say, disgusted by that homage. But now actually the disgust has also entered the National Assembly, because they're not very happy anymore about this minute of silence.
French media, it took them only less than a week to dig out who Quentin Durand actually was, at least on social media, and they have pulled out quite a lot of from his thousands of messages on X, where he has had a very, very extreme voice. I'm just going to read a couple of them. I support Adolf, but each of their own. We, of course, know who the Adolf he's referring to is. We don't want to live with Africans, whether they are delinquents or not. We want fascism. And so it goes on and on and on. Racist, anti-Semitic thinking, glorification of fascism, and and nostalgia for Nazi Germany. It is not a big surprise, I must say, when you decide to hold national homage for a far-right activist, that this in some ways gonna, come back in a not so nice way on you. And of course, then this has, put a quite bitter aftertaste in the mouth of many of those who participated in this minute of silence. The reactions still, I think, are quite weak, I must say, because the politicians have been confronted with this and they responded that, well, had I knew, I wouldn't have participated. Or the Speaker of Parliament has said that she's horrified, but she stands by her decision to hold this minute of silence because it was such a great public outcry as it happened. But I think it shows just the lack of common sense from the politicians when it came to this case, which was horrible. But the lack of coolness and being able to distinguish between public outcry and feelings and emotions, and a very, very heated public debate, and what is the palace of democracy, which is the National Assembly, that should, I think we can all agree, should not hold minutes of silence for people who hold clearly anti-democratic opinions.
Yeah, no, and it's we can say it was a very populist reaction of the entire Assemblée Nationale to hold this minute of silence. But now it comes back like a boomerang in their faces, I think.
It does, but it also they were rules. There are rules for how these things are supposed to happen. They decided to sideline those rules and not stick to them, and now they're going to say again that, well, next time we're going to do better. But I'm not sure that they actually learn from their mistakes. So hopefully there will be no next time. It's shameful. I can't say anything else. I find it very
is also very tasteless, which brings us to the next segment. Something very tasteful. Something very savory to end the show. The world-famous Michelin guide unveiled the new list of this year, 2026, of the best French restaurants. At the ceremony this week, there were 62 new starred chefs, only one restaurant to win a 3rd star. That's the highest distinction of the Michelin guide. There was Les Moranières in the Savoie, in the Alps. And there are in total 668 Michelin-starred restaurants in France nowadays. We all love good food, especially you and me, Sarah. What's the restaurant that stood out for you, or the one where you thought, yeah, that's very deserved, or another one where you thought, oh, I really need to go there?
I think I need to go to all of them. I'd only
668,
had dinner.
huh?
Yeah, well, I can. If someone wants to pay for it, I'm willing to.
Well, you can do it in 1 year and
and
have lunch and dinner every day in another Michelin-starred restaurant. Nice challenge. Yeah.
I'm not sure my doctor would be agreeing with that. But
No.
no, I mean, have you had dinner at Michelin-starred restaurants?
Yeah, it would be presumptuous to say regularly, but actually, at least once every 3-4 months. It's like a real treat. The last one actually I went to was a few months ago in San Sebastian, a Spanish 1-star Michelin restaurant. I forgot the name, but it was pretty good. And there's a very good restaurant here in Amsterdam where I go to regularly, which is actually a very normal bistro kind of restaurant. and it has 1 Michelin star. So it's not as posh or serious as many Michelin star restaurants. But yeah, I do actually go to Michelin star restaurants. And Amsterdam has become so expensive that the price difference between a normal restaurant and a very high class restaurant is not that big anymore. So I prefer to cook at home and then go out a little bit less, and then once every while go to a real great restaurant. And so yes, I do tend to follow.
You take me next time. I've only been to one here in France, and no, it was a real treat. There are some trends that you can see, often family business actually, where couples are at the head of the restaurants. So wife and husband working together to build the business. You can also see that the sourcing of produce, and you really name exactly where everything comes from, has become very, very popular and almost mandatory today when it comes to these high-end restaurants. But some things remain the same. And these days, it's barely mentioned in the coverage, but the fact that there are so few women who are awarded with Michelin stars,
it's crazy.
Which is, of course, not just the Michelin stars, but the top chefs are considered a male business. And today it's not. I mean, I've been reading through a lot of stories in French media about these awards, and it's barely mentioned anymore. I think it's just considered as something so natural and so normal today that we don't even talk about it. I managed to find one number, which is like 6.5% of the newly starred chefs are women, which means that we're actually increasing the divide further and further, because according to the French authorities, about 19% of French chefs are women. But instead of then closing the gap, and you can say well, in the past there used to be much more like top chefs, they were men, but we're not anywhere close of closing that gap, and even making it then relative to the number of women who are chefs. So
that's a real shame. But instead of going to all the Michelin star restaurants, Sarah, maybe we can go to a few of the female chefs. That would be a nice topic for So French, and it will cost us less.
Well, we'll see. I don't know if they're cheaper, but to support the women chefs is definitely something that I would be interested in doing. There has been some interest lately in more green restaurants. Since 7 years, they hand out something that's called the green. The green stars. It's not really taking off, and we'll see whether the guide is going to push through with this and make it a real important part of their guide, or if it will remain something on the side and just a little bit of greenwashing of the otherwise very red guide.
Well, that was our dessert. It made me hungry. It's time, unfortunately, to wrap up this edition. You can find all our episodes where you usually get your podcast, and our YouTube channel is also up and running. So you can also look at us if you would, I don't know, maybe there are some people who would like that. Search for @SoFrenchShow, and you should find us, or through the link on our Instagram.
And to make sure that you don't miss any of our new shows, make sure to follow us on Instagram. You search for So French Show, and share this episode with your friends and family, and send us an email if you have questions or input or other ideas of what we should talk about. The address is bonjour@sofrench.show.
Yeah, and the So French podcast is produced and presented by me, Stefan Vries.
And by me, Sara Bertilsson, and the original music is made by Laurent Blot. We will be back in 2 weeks with a new episode and the results of the local elections in France and particularly here in Paris. So don't miss that. Until then, take care. And,
au revoir.
Au revoir.